This is a fantastic tip to help your clients find out how they can do certain things. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Therapy Business School. My name is James Taylor. I'm an online counsellor, hypnotherapist and life coach. I'm also a podcaster, YouTuber and author. Now, this is a great exercise that I got from a mentor of mine who's now passed away, and it helps clients figure out how they can do certain things, all right? Now, there's a bit of a story behind this that I need to share with you first of all. The story is, back in 1968, there was a terrible storm in a little town called Barrie, just outside Ontario, Canada, and it decimated the place. Now, the head of the local radio station was called Bob Templeton. Now, Bob went down to the scene of this incident, and there was buildings in half, cars upside down, the emergency services were there, and he just thought, what a mess. Now, it was estimated that back in 1968, the cost to put things right would, physically right, not emotionally right, but the cost to put things right was going to cost $3 million, which was an enormous amount of money, especially back in 1968. Now, as he was driving back to his radio station, he was thinking, there's got to be something a man in my position can do to help these people. They just must be. And when he got back to his radio station, he thought, I want to have a fundraising event. These people need the money now. They don't need it a year from now. So he called a meeting with all the other executives of the radio station. And he said, we've all heard, because this has made the national news, we've all heard what happened to this town. And they need the money now. He said, I've been down there today. He said there was buildings ripped apart. Some people had lost all the possessions. Many were not insured. People had died. He said they need the money. We need to help them get back on their feet. Are you all interested in a fundraising event? And he said, yeah, we all agree. Yeah, let's do this. So we drew something on a board, and I want to draw what he drew and share it with you. All right. So what he did was, if this is the board here, and at the top of the board, he wrote 333. And he said, here's what I want to do. In 3 days from now, I want to hold a 3-hour fundraising event with our radio station. And I want to raise the $3 million. I want all of it to go to the people of the town. And there was silence in the room. And then someone said, Bob, that's impossible. That can't be done. And he said, I thought you'd say that. He said, this is how we're going to do it. And he added something else to the board. And then he added one more thing. He said, we're not going to think of how we can't, because how we can't is never going to get us there. It's now we're all intelligent people sitting around this table, and I want us to only think of reasons of how we can. And when someone comes up with how we can, I'm going to put it on the board here. And if anyone comes up with a reason of how we can't, I want all of you to shout, next, because it's never going to get us there. We're going to next every can't reason and think of only how we can. And then someone said, but Bob, we're only a small community radio station, and the people, our listeners, are not very well off. Now, even if all of our listeners gave everything they had, and they're not going to, we still wouldn't make that figure. He said, next, that's how we can't. So how can we do it? There was silence in the room. And then someone said, well, what we could do, we could get in touch with all the other radio stations, because this has made the national news. We could tell them what we're doing and see if they want to get involved. And that way we get their listeners, and their listeners might pay some money towards this. He said, fantastic. So we scribbled that down on the piece of paper. And then someone said, you'd want someone famous, like a celebrity, to host this though, to generate the interest. And they all agreed. Now, 2 names were put forward of 2 presenters who were like the Ant and Dec of their time. And then someone said, you'll never get them. They only do television. And it's such short notice that we'll never get them. Now a few more people got on board Next, and he said, we're getting them. And he wrote their number, he wrote their details down. Now what happened was, it took a little bit of time and effort, but when they all started thinking collectively of how they could do something, as opposed to how they couldn't, the ideas became more and more. Now the funny thing about this is that 3 days later, they did have the 3-hour radio show. They did raise the $3 million, and all of it went to the town, and they got those 2 guys to host it. Now there's a follow-up to this story. A few years after this, there was a 6th generation barbers in America, and it was doing okay, but a barber franchise came along and was offering $6 haircuts, and the $6 haircuts were a lot less than all the other barbershops. And because everyone was going to get these $6 haircuts, all the barbershops were losing money, and some started going out of business, and then that sped up. So there was this guy, this father, who was like semi-retired, ready to hand over the reins to his son, his adult son. And he said to his son, you know, you were going to be the 7th generation of barbers, but because of this barber franchise, it's not possible. And the son said, well, Dad, there's always a way. You know, if there's a problem, there must be a solution. If there's a question, there's got to be an answer. There's this yin and yang going on. So we need to figure out, if there's a way we're going to close, there's a way we must be able to stay open. Now the father said, well, I can't think of any. Now the son had heard about this 333 exercise, but instead of 333 at the top, he wrote a title, How to Save Money. And his father said, well, I've told you how we can save money. We need to close, because at the minute we're losing money. And the son realised he'd put down the wrong title, because he had to acknowledge his father was correct on this. And he said to his father, well, really, I was looking how we can stay open and save money. You know, that was my purpose. And the father said, look, if you want to mess around with drawings, so be it. But I'm going to go and cut the customer's hair that we've still got, as opposed to sitting here with you. So the father went off, and the son was left with himself and a bit of paper, and he didn't really know what to do. He racked his brain thinking, get the title right, how can I do this, how can I do this? And he could only come up with one idea, and his idea was genius. Not only did the barbershop stay open, it made more money than it ever had. Now what the idea was, the son made a sign and put it in the window to catch the foot traffic of the people walking past the barbershop. And on the sign he wrote a message for the people to read. And that message was, we fix $6 haircuts. Right? I love that story. So when you're working with a client, if you were to get this template up and say, you know, either give it a homework or maybe do it in the session, how could you do this? What ways are possible for you to do it? And encourage them to think of how they can, and negate how they can't, because the can't won't get them there. I've used this so many times with so many different clients, and it's amazing what the clients come up with. Now what I have noticed is that sometimes it takes a little bit of encouragement to get the client on board with thinking of how they can. Because if they've been sitting with a problem for a long time, they might have been telling themselves for an awful long time, I can't do it, I can't do it, it can't be done, I can't do it, I'm not possible, I'm not enough. And that's difficult to get past with a client. So this is more from the life coaching area of work really, but it also works with hypnotherapy. It also works with counselling clients. It works like a charm. But you do need to be supportive, and you do need to have the encouragement, and to get them to maybe change the frequency of the thinking, or encourage them to anyway, to try and get them thinking, how can I do this? So like all these things that I recommend, I've done myself. So I don't just talk the talk or walk the walk. And I would encourage you to think about how you can do something that maybe is holding you back. What can you do? And every time you hear a can't, that internal voice, next every can't reason. Alright? So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like, a share and a subscribe. That stuff helps the channel massively, it really does. And I will see you on the next episode of Therapy Business School. And this is James. Bye bye.